The morning sunlight filtered through the glass walls of the Hartwell Group's penthouse office, scattering across marble floors and steel accents. New York's skyline glimmered outside, untouchable, powerful, and cold. Inside, Claire Bennett sat at her desk, trying to ignore the echo of her own heartbeat as she glanced toward the closed office door across the hall. Ethan Hartwell was in early again. Of course he was. He was always there before anyone else, the kind of man who built empires before breakfast and made impossible decisions before most people's alarms had even gone off. Claire had been his executive strategist for 2 years, ambitious, capable, and careful. She knew how to match his rhythm, anticipate his needs, and stay invisible when he needed space. But lately, that distance had been slipping. It started with small things, a longer pause when he spoke to her, a look that lingered across the conference room table. And then, the night of the charity gala, everything changed. She could still feel the echo of his hand at the small of her back as he guided her through the crowd, his voice low, the scent of his cologne crisp and warm against the chill of champagne air. It had been nothing, or it should have been. But when his gaze met hers under the soft light of chandeliers, something had fractured in both of them. And neither had been the same since. That morning, as Claire reviewed the quarterly report, her email pinged, a message from Ethan. Conference room B, 10 minutes. Bring the numbers. E. Her stomach tightened. It wasn't unusual, but something about the curt tone made her pulse quicken. She gathered her files, steadied her breathing, and walked down the hall, heels soft against the carpet. He was already there when she entered, standing by the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, the skyline reflected in the glass behind him. Morning, she said, keeping her voice even. He turned, expression unreadable. You're early. You said 10 minutes. I expected you in 9. She smiled faintly, a small exchange that used to feel harmless but now carried weight. He gestured toward the table. Let's start. For the next 30 minutes, they spoke in numbers and strategies, stock trends and projections. Their voices were calm, their conversation professional, but under every word was something else. A pulse. A line neither dared to cross. When the meeting ended, he closed the file and exhaled. Claire, stay for a second. Her hands froze on her laptop. Of course. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he leaned against the table, looking at her the way a man looks at a decision he knows will ruin him but can't stop considering. Do you ever think about what we're doing? He asked quietly. Her throat tightened. Working. His lips curved slightly. If that's what you want to call it. Mr. Hartwell. Ethan. She hesitated. He only ever asked her to use his first name when they were alone. And every time, it broke a piece of the wall she'd built around herself. Ethan, she said softly, the word tasting forbidden. We can't. I know, he cut in. Believe me, I know. But every day, it gets harder to pretend that this is just business. The air between them stilled. Outside, a helicopter crossed the skyline, its reflection slicing through the glass like a warning. Claire forced herself to look away. You built this company by staying in control. Don't lose that now. He gave a quiet laugh. Not amused, not angry, just tired. You think I haven't tried? I've spent months convincing myself that you're just another member of my team. That if I keep my distance, it'll pass. He took a slow step closer. It hasn't. Her pulse raced. She wanted to move, to step back, to draw a line again, but her feet wouldn't obey. This can't happen, she whispered. Then why does it feel like it already has? The words hit her like a confession she'd been waiting to hear and dreading all at once. She looked up, meeting his eyes, grey and steady and full of everything he never said. Because we crossed the boundary long ago, she said quietly. The moment we started feeling this way. He studied her for a long moment. You could walk out that door, he said finally. Forget we ever said this. I won't stop you. She nodded, but she didn't move. Because they both knew she wouldn't. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Then, finally, she spoke. You have everything, Ethan. Power. Control. The world listens when you speak. Why risk that for something that could destroy us both? Because, he said, his voice low, for the first time in years, something actually feels real. Her breath caught. And suddenly she understood. All his walls, all his distance, weren't power. They were armor. For the rest of the day, they kept their distance, throwing themselves into work as if nothing had happened. But the tension was different now. Heavier, sharper. Every glance, every shared silence, every brush of her hand as she passed him a file felt electric. When evening fell, the office emptied, and the city outside transformed into a sea of lights. Claire was packing up when a soft knock came at her door. Ethan stood there, tie loosened, fatigue written in the lines of his face. "Still here?" she asked. He shrugged. Couldn't focus. She hesitated, then motioned toward the window seat. "Join the club." He stepped in, closing the door behind him. For a long time, they said nothing. The rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier, streaking the glass with silver. "Do you ever wonder," he said quietly, "what would have happened if we'd met somewhere else? Without titles, without expectations." "All the time," she admitted. "But then I remind myself we didn't. And maybe that's for a reason." He turned to her. "You really believe that?" "I have to." Ethan nodded slowly, as if agreeing with words that cut him open. "You make it sound easy." "It's not." Her voice broke slightly. "Every day I walk into this office and pretend I don't see it. The way you look at me, the way I—" She stopped herself, shaking her head. "It's torture, Ethan." He moved closer, not touching her, just close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "Then stop pretending." Her eyes lifted to his. "If we do this, we lose everything. Your company, my career, the respect we've both built." "And if we don't?" he asked. She swallowed hard. "Then we lose each other." The words hung there, heavy, impossible. For a moment, neither breathed. Then, finally, Ethan took a step back. His voice, when he spoke again, was steady. "You're right. Boundaries exist for a reason." Claire blinked, surprised by the restraint in his tone. "But," he continued, his eyes holding hers, "so does courage." He reached into his pocket and placed a small silver keycard on her desk, the key to the private conference suite on the top floor, the one no one ever used but him. "I'm not asking for an answer," he said. "I'm asking for honesty. Meet me tomorrow night, if you want to stop pretending." Then he turned and left, leaving her staring at the keycard as the rain blurred the city into streaks of light. That night, Claire lay awake, his words circling her mind. Courage. Honesty. The line between right and wrong had never felt so fragile. The next evening, she found herself standing in front of the suite door, the keycard trembling in her hand. The corridor was silent. She could still walk away. No one would ever know. She almost did. Almost. But then she swiped the card. The door clicked open. Inside, the room was dimly lit, soft golden light spilling across glass and steel. Ethan stood by the window, as he always did, watching the city below. When he turned, his expression wasn't triumphant. It was vulnerable. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I almost didn't." He nodded. "But you did." She took a deep breath. "Because I'm tired of hiding from something that already owns me." He crossed the room slowly, stopping just close enough that their hands brushed. "So am I." Neither moved for a moment. Then, quietly, he reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face, a gesture so simple, yet so intimate it made her eyes sting. "You know this changes everything," she whispered. "I know. And there's no going back." "There never was," he said softly. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, the sound of a world shifting. They stood there, not as boss and employee, not as billionaire and strategist, but as two people stripped bare of their roles, their defenses shattered. When she finally rested her forehead against his chest, he didn't speak. He just held her, steady, quiet, as if afraid that any sound might break the fragile truth between them. They didn't make promises that night. They didn't talk about tomorrow or what they stood to lose. They simply existed, two souls who had spent too long pretending that boundaries could protect them from what they already felt. And when dawn broke, painting the city gold, Claire realized something she hadn't before. Love wasn't always about possession or control. Sometimes it was about surrender. Ethan stirred beside her, looking at her with a mixture of pride and regret. "You're going to change everything, you know that." She smiled faintly. "Maybe some things need changing." He reached for her hand. "Then let's face it together." Outside, the world woke up again. Busy, cold, relentless. But for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt alone. They had crossed a line that could never be redrawn, shattered the boundaries that once defined them. And though the future was uncertain, one truth remained. Love, even when forbidden, had a power that no rule, no title, no fear could contain. Because some boundaries aren't meant to hold us back. They're meant to be broken, so we can finally find what was real all along.